Hello, Literature Writing 308A students. We're here today to talk about Anglo-Norman culture. Anglo-Norman culture and literature and how that relates to the Middle English period. So Anglo-Norman literature, the term Anglo, you should understand because it's like from Anglo-Saxon, it means people that lived in England. Norman comes from the term Northmen because the Normans are a group of Scandinavian folks who landed and settled in the north of what is now France, and they were called Northmen, which then contracted into Norman. In 1066, the Anglo-Saxon world was thriving. That's around the same time as all of the literature that we read from the Anglo-Saxon world, right around the beginning of that 11th century there, the end of the 10th, the beginning of the 11th century. Edward the Confessor, who is the king at the time, he's an Anglo-Saxon king, he dies, and it says Hic Edwardus Rex, the king, Edward, is killed, is what it's telling us here. And all of the images here that I'm going to be showing you are taken from the Bayeux Tapestry, which actually was embroidered about 20 years after the Norman invasion happened. So it's a really, really contemporary view of the Norman invasion. And I just wanted to show you back here, this is a picture of Edward that being laying out in his deathbed. So Harold of England, he takes the throne, and he's got the support of the English group of folks that ran things called the Witan. So after Harold takes the throne, another Harold, I know it's confusing, but from Norway, decides that he's going to try to take over England, but Harold of England defeats him. So you can see here, this is where that goes down. However, meanwhile, back on the continent, while Harold of England is running around fighting off folks from Norway, William, called William the Bastard, had been told by King Edward that he was going to be the next successor. So William decided he was going to seek the throne. And here's a picture of some ships coming over. Normandy and England are not that far apart from each other. So you see the ships coming over, and you see some horses getting out and ready to come over here and attack these poor Anglo-Saxon farmers. Here we have a depiction of the battle. You can see here some elements that we saw in the Anglo-Saxon writing. Notice the shield wall. Notice that there's a lot of representations of people having things happen to them, getting chopped up, getting like this guy's getting trampled over here by a horse. And I got a little close up here just so we can look at a few more conventions in a little bit of close up way. But if you remember that there was all of the descriptions of the battle and the gore and all of those things that happened in the Anglo-Saxon world, well, you can see those happening here in this close up. You can see the horses having horrible things happen to them. People are dying and laying on the ground dead and being thrown over here. But you can also see at the very top some of the battle beasts. There's some creatures. There's what might be either an eagle or a raven of some kind. This is some kind of animal. Perhaps they're wolves, or they're meant to be wolves. Some more birds over here on this side. This is in some ways a visual version of what we saw the Anglo-Saxon literature writing about. Unfortunately, Harold is killed. So you can see the long panel. Some folks have argued that the Bayeux Tapestry is one of the earliest examples of a comic because it shows there are panels essentially. So like you can sort of see here, there's like this is one scene, and then next to it is another scene, and then next to it is another scene. So this last scene on the very, very right of the panel that you're looking at is when Harold is killed. This says Harold, Harold, Rex, King, interfectus est. He's killed. Harold the King is killed. Also, if you take a look down here at the bottom of the Bayeux Tapestry, you can see a little dude pulling off the armor of a guy who's either injured or dead over here. So you can already see looting happening, and we see descriptions of looting in Judith. So there's a number of places where we see these conventions being represented, but in a visual way. Here's a close-up of Harold. The story is that he got killed with an arrow through the eye. So this is Harold, and this is the little arrow here sticking through his eye. And then you can see again, it says Harold Rex Interfectus Est. This is a close-up of that. And you can see a close-up of a guy pulling off armor of another guy down here. So just some interesting representations of the battle sequence of the Normans. So just to give you a sense of how things went down. So we noticed up here that Harold, the King of England, defeats the Scandinavian folks. And then, so he's up here in the north of England, and France is way down here at the bottom of England. Harold has to march his troops from the very top of England there by Stamford Bridge all the way down to where it says Battle of Hastings. So they were kind of exhausted and had gone through a forced march, whereas William's troops had come over on boats and were raring to go. So this kind of shows you when it all went down. So they had to traverse almost all of England from the 25th through the 14th at a time when there weren't, they just had to march. So here's a picture of France, right? And Normandy is this top part up here in the purple, and you can see its close proximity to England, which is pink above it there. essentially then what happened is William brought French culture to England because he was French, and even though he had originally been Scandinavian, they had been living there for centuries at that point. And he ruthlessly dispossessed or killed most of the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy that had existed there before he came over and replaced them with folks loyal to him from France. So there was this dual interest in England and France over the next 200 years through the 12th and 16th centuries as folks who were from France ruled in England.
And you there, peasant, be silent.
Hello, hi, welcome. Hi, milady.
Well, after the Normans came, nothing was the same.
Yeah, well, a lot of things changed.
Suddenly everyone started speaking French. Everyone was parlez-vous français? Here and there. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? That's as it was, French every day, morning, noon, and night.
I mean, the language was changed radically, the culture was changed radically,
and even the literature changed. Everything changed.
The poetry was changed. The Old English were into alliteration, as we might remember.
Haven't you heard? Alliteration is out and rhyme is in. It's so French.
You're absolutely right there, milady.
The Normans started building stone castles everywhere, and suddenly there was a few little hierarchy where serfs were at the bottom, and folks like myself were naturally at the top.
All right, well, I'm gonna tell them a little bit more about the culture that the Normans brought in from France. Okay, thanks, milady. Thank you. I'll see you soon.